There is something really interesting about this documentary and how I saw it for the first time that we need to talk about. So if you guys remember, maybe it was last year, a little bit before that, I did these videos on the classic horror documentaries of the years past. Some of my favorites were these. Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue, which was narrated by Lance Henriksen and is such a great documentary, going over the horror movies that came out throughout the years of America, and it was a great documentary. Then there was this one, which isn't necessarily a documentary, but seems to be something that everybody has good memories of. Boogeymen, the Killer compilation. What a fun video that was. Then we went on to one that was really good and one that I recommended to everybody because it gives you that great nostalgic feel of stuff from the early 2000s and covers all the classic slashers. Going to Pieces, the rise and fall of the slasher film. And then the one that is basically the more higher end version of some of the ones I've talked about that came on IFC back in the day. The American Nightmare, a celebration of films of horror's golden age of fright, which of course went over some classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, but had a great cast in this one. This one was really good. But I was looking through some of the comments of those recently and it dawned on me. I forgot to talk about what is possibly the greatest horror documentary of all time. Now, this is one that it's like the authentic version of what we're seeing today. Now, not throwing any shade, because quite frankly, I enjoy these, but I'm talking about documentaries like the In Search of Darkness series. You know, they go over the 80s horror movies and 90s horror movies now, and they did the 80s 3 times, and they covered a lot of great films. And don't get me wrong, I really love them. But what if I told you that was essentially an authentic version of that? What if I told you that was something that basically came out while those movies were happening? Because clearly the world knew that we were going through a renaissance of horror at that time. Well, I thought to do this video and just forgot, moved on to different things, and then the other night I went over to the movie shelf and sure enough I saw this, Terror in the Aisle. Now, I think a lot of you already are cheering seeing this because you know how good this is, but if you don't, let me set the stage for you on Terror in the Aisles. Terror in the Aisles goes over the golden age of horror as it was essentially happening during that time, covering films from the 70s like The Omen, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, to films in the early 80s like Friday the 13th Part 2, American Werewolf in London, the list goes on. Let's raise the stakes even better. What if this thing was narrated and had sequences throughout it by some sort of crypt keeper type character, somebody that kind of guided you through the documentary? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if it couldn't get any cooler than watching a documentary about the movies we love while it was happening, well, let me introduce you to Mr. Donald Pleasence. Yes. Now, there's a big distinction between Terror in the Aisles and stuff like In Search of Darkness. What makes Terror in the Aisles so great, guys, this one approaches these movies with much more of a psychology to it. Between the movies that are getting shown, Donald Pleasence will show up in a movie theater around a crowd of people while they're watching some sort of scary movie on screen. Donald will talk to you, the audience, about what it is about horror that we love, why we can't look away, and moments that truly scare us. It is eye candy. It is so great seeing Donald Pleasence in here. But if that isn't cool enough, well, we need somebody else to help narrate these things. Well, who should we get? How about Nancy Allen? Yeah, Nancy Allen is also in these segments where she's talking to you between clips of these movies going on, and it is so cool. So between Nancy Allen and Donald Pleasence, it is amazing seeing the two of them. The roster of movies in here is out of this world good, and they show some great sequences. It's more so about moments of the films rather than the films themselves and what those moments represent. You'll see classic scenes in this, like stuff from Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978. You'll see Jaws 2. You'll see Halloween. But here's something that's really unique about Terror in the Aisles that I absolutely love. Getting the rights to use all these movies was probably one thing, and I think this came out from Universal, and I know that this is a legendary VHS. I see people that have horror collections high and low on YouTube and on Instagram and Facebook, and one of the favorite tapes that's always prominently displayed is the Terror in the Aisles tape. Now, what's so cool about this is the poster. Now, if you look, you'll see it's the skeleton, but if you notice something, what is all that? Well, I'll zoom in on the image of this right now. On the cover of Terror in the Isles on the skull, it's basically a roster of all the movies you're going to see in here. The Raven, Conga, Food of the Gods, The Seduction, Silent Partner, The Birds, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Night of the Living Dead, Rosemary's Baby, Dawn of the Dead, Scanners, Frankenstein, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Poltergeist, Alien, Marathon Man, Jaws 2, When a Stranger Calls. The list goes on. What a cool way to promote this. I mean, that skeleton looks amazing. This is one hell of a documentary. But here's something that I really love, and I didn't realize how good this was until I saw this on my shelf, instantly pulled it out and said, oh my god, we have to talk about Terror in the Isles. The soundtrack for this is the hidden gem of this entire documentary. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, well, what do you mean soundtrack? They're showing movie clips from all this stuff. Isn't just the music playing from that? No. I guess for one reason or another, it would have costed a lot more money to probably license all the music that was used from these movies in this documentary. So what they did is hire a guy to redo scores and music pieces for this. And for some reason, this guy absolutely killed it. There's a special feature on here where the guy that did the score was told, hey, kind of make some stuff sound like Jaws, kind of make some stuff sound like Halloween, but don't copy it. We don't want to get any sort of copyright or anything like that. And this guy just said, hold my beer. The music in Terror in the Isles, guys, is actually one of the best things. And it sounds so, like I said, no shade thrown to documentaries that come out today, like In Search of Darkness, where they've got all this kind of 80s synth stuff that's being played and over these that is coming out. It's music that's coming out today, essentially. This guy was making authentic, like, early 80s synth music for this documentary, and the stuff that sounds like Halloween is actually incredible. I love it so much, and I love the segments in here that go over Halloween, too. So, without a shadow of a doubt, guys, this is probably one of the best horror documentaries of all time. And I say that, you know, not mincing any words, because I've covered a lot. Going back to these, I love these. These were some of my favorite videos I did last year. But when it comes to the creme de la creme, the best documentaries in horror, you have to go to Terror in the Isles. Seeing Donald Pleasence talk you through these movies is the best part. And this was done in like the early 80s, so this was right around the time he did Halloween 2, probably right afterwards. I think this came out in 1984. So yeah, Donald had no beard. That's the only thing that's funny, is when you watch him, he doesn't have that Dr. Loomis beard in here, but those segments are amazing. And they put a smile on my face every time he talked, so it was so cool. There is something really interesting about this documentary and how I saw it for the first time that we need to talk about. There is a release out there that you may own that this documentary got snuck into, but we're going to get to that in just a second. This right here, what I have, guys, is the Scream Factory Blu-ray. I watched this Blu-ray literally today to do this video, and listen, it looks great. Now, I looked at the back to see if it was remastered in any sort of 2K or 4K. It doesn't say that, but here's what I will say. When you see the segments of Donald and Nancy, it looks absolutely fantastic. It looks great. It looks like it essentially could have been taken from the original elements. Now, that's not the way I'm used to seeing it before watching it this way because of, well, we'll get to it in just a second. But this release, surprisingly, is like a really good release from Scream Factory. Not only does the documentary look fantastic, but they got an interview with Nancy Allen on here. They got an interview with the composer John Beale and editor Gregory McClathy, and there's actually a new audio commentary with pop culture historian Russell Dyball. And there's also the alternate television cut, which I think essentially just gets rid of some nudity and things like that. So, of course, watching the real cut, the home video cut, is the way to go. This release, I actually recommend it big time. I don't know if this didn't do really well when it came out. I'm pretty sure it's still in print. I don't think it had a slipcover or anything like that, but the Scream Factory Terror in the Isle Blu-ray looks great. Now, I know some of you could be saying this needs a 4K or something like that, and listen, I hear ya. It's not like I'm against it, but what I will say is I was shocked at how good, how high of quality the Nancy Allen and Donald Pleasence scenes are when they're in the movie theater talking to you. So this is really cool. But like I said, this wasn't the first way I watched this documentary, so you're probably wondering, well, how did you? Some of you probably already know. Well, years ago, and I'm talking at least 10 or 11 years ago, I was talking to some friends, and one of my friends said, hey, have you seen Terror in the Isle? And I was like, I've heard of that. That's that horror documentary, right? He's like, oh yeah, man. I mean, I don't know if it came out on DVD or not. I know it had a VHS, but it's a special feature on a Halloween 2 Blu-ray. And I was like, what do you mean? Wait, I've got the Scream Factory Blu-ray. It's not on there. He goes, no, 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 no. Go get the 30th anniversary DVD. And that's what this is right here. Now, you can get this on Amazon for pretty cheap. As a matter of fact, when I bought this, I think I got it at a Meijer grocery store in 2015 for like $7. On the back of this, it's so inconspicuous, but if you look at the back of the Halloween 2 Blu-ray, right there under bonus features, Terror in the Aisles. It's just a bonus feature. The documentary is a bonus feature on this Blu-ray. I couldn't believe it. So this was why I got this Blu-ray. I don't know why or how it got snuck onto there. It wasn't even something that was advertised on the Blu-ray. You would think they would have had a big sticker that says featuring Terror in the Aisles or something like that. But no, they just snuck it onto this Halloween 2 Blu-ray. Now here's the distinction. It's a special feature on a Blu-ray disc, and this was well before it got any sort of HD upscale or whatever Scream Factory did. So, between the two, the Terror in the Aisles Blu-ray looks a lot better, specifically the Nancy Allen and Donald Pleasance clips. They look really great on this release, and they don't look that great on this release. But if some of you just want to own it and you didn't know about that, I'd go price some of these out on Amazon and see what they come up with. If you can get this for around 18 or 20 bucks, I do think it's worth it for the special features with Nancy and the composer and the quality. But if you just want to own it and you never have, or if you haven't seen it, you could probably get this Blu-ray for dirt cheap right now, and the documentary is on here. It just doesn't look as good. But what a freaking awesome special feature. I mean, they just dropped it on here. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Listen, when it comes to horror documentaries, I gotta say, revisiting Terror in the Aisles, it doesn't come close. This is one of the greatest horror documentaries. This is as authentic as you could possibly get. My only hope is that one day they'll do a sequel, Terror in the Aisles 2. And what I'd like to see them do is go over the horror that's come out over the last 10 years. I mean, we've had some really great horror movies from 2015 to 2025. Why can't we do a sequel? Terror in the Aisles 2, let's make it happen. There's a bloodthirst for horror documentaries all the time, so why not? But anyway, guys, after covering all these horror documentaries, I couldn't not do Terror in the Aisles. There you go, guys. There's 2 ways to own this documentary, believe it or not, right here. Let me know what your thoughts are on Terror in the Aisles. Let me know if you have this release or if you have the Halloween 2 release. I'd love to know. And listen, guys, thank you guys for watching, and the next time you're at the movie theater, just remember those cool clips of Donald Pleasance in the audience telling you it's only a movie. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.